Sup, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Neurosketch with Dr. Ken. But if this is the first time you've seen this channel, don't forget to subscribe. Today I'm going to talk about the submandibular ganglion, one among the parasympathetic ganglia of the head, and this is your submandibular ganglion. So the submandibular ganglion is one among the 4 parasympathetic ganglia of the head. What are the other 3? You have your ciliary ganglion, you have the pterygopalatine ganglion, which is also called the sphenopalatine ganglion, which is also called the ganglion of hay fever, and then we have otic ganglion making, and together with submandibular, now they make 4 parasympathetic ganglia of the head. We have already discussed about otic ganglion, and it'll be easy for you if you watch the otic ganglion before this one, because we have a lot of information that you have included in the otic ganglion. So these parasympathetic ganglia of the head, they are relay centers for parasympathetic fibers. They are relay centers for parasympathetic. What does it mean? It's where the parasympathetic fibers are going to synapse. Remember, they are called the parasympathetic ganglia. What's the meaning of ganglion? Collection of neuronal cell bodies outside the central nervous system. Meaning, these fibers are leaving the brain. They are leaving the brain, are going to somewhere so as to synapse, so as to join the other fibers, and these centers are called the parasympathetic ganglion. So what do they what synapse in the parasympathetic ganglion? It's going to be the parasympathetic fibers pre and post, because it's a ganglion. We have fibers that are coming to the ganglion, they are called the preganglionic fibers, and we have fibers that are leaving the ganglion, they are called the postganglionic fibers. So the preganglionic parasympathetic fiber are going to join the postganglionic parasympathetic fiber. They are synapsing within the ganglion, which ganglion again? They are parasympathetic ganglia. So what is the organization of this ganglia? We have talked about it already. So as a repetition, we have a ganglion, and we have 3 main contributions to the ganglion. We have the sympathetic contribution, we have the parasympathetic contribution, and then we have the sensory contribution. But we said the function of the sensory here is more of topographical connection, that it is not functionally connected to this ganglia. It actually to suspend the ganglia. And we even said, like, the parasympathetic ganglia of the head, they are being suspended by the sensory branches of trigeminal nerve. The sensory branches of trigeminal nerve. Why? We said because the trigeminal nerve is going to, it's a chief sensory supplier of the head, is reaching different places. This ganglia, they're making use of the trigeminal nerve to reach into different places to give that parasympathetic supply. Okay, so what are the outputs from the parasympathetic ganglion? Is going to be your motor, which is GVE, general visceral efferent, and that's going to be the secretomotor to glands, and the vasomotor to blood vessels. Okay, we have said this is a parasympathetic ganglion. What do synapse in parasympathetic ganglion? It's only the parasympathetic fibers that are going to synapse within the parasympathetic ganglion. The sympathetic and the sensory contribution, they do not synapse within the parasympathetic ganglion. They are going through, and they do not form synapse within the parasympathetic ganglia. The parasympathetic ganglia is a ganglia it's a relay center for the parasympathetic fibers that are going to to supply different structures. Okay, so here is your this is the submandibular ganglion, and the submandibular ganglion, as you can see, is being suspended by the branch of trigeminal nerve, a sensory branch of trigeminal nerve. But if you have to be specific, this is your lingual nerve, and the lingual nerve is a branch of V3. So it's safe now to say the submandibular ganglion is suspended by V3. But if you want to be specific, it's suspended by the lingual nerve, which is a branch of V3. This is your mandibular ganglion. Then submandibular ganglion is supplying the submandibular gland, is also supplying the sublingual gland. Both sublingual and the submandibular glands are being supplied by the submandibular ganglion, and the submandibular ganglion is suspended by the lingual nerve. The lingual nerve is a sensory nerve, right? So what is the sensory contribution to the submandibular ganglion? Is going to be a lingual nerve. Okay. And lingual nerve is going further extra miles to supply the submandibular gland, but it's also, see, you have a ganglion here, okay, but the sublingual gland is here. So how do the fiber go to the to the sublingual gland is by the way of lingual nerve. Okay, so the lingual nerve is going to the sublingual gland. But also, what is the location now of the submandibular ganglion? The submandibular ganglion is found deep within muscles. It is above the deep part of the submandibular gland. This is a submandibular gland. It has got superficial part and deep part, and this gland is above the deep part of the submandibular gland. But this ganglion is below the lingual nerve, because it's been suspended by lingual nerve, correct? And then it's also related by the stellohyoid muscle. See, the stellohyoid muscle is found posteriorly, and that's your sublingual, the submandibular ganglion. But remember, this is a lingual nerve, and remember, the lingual nerve is being accompanied by the chorda tympani, and the chorda tympani, we say the chorda tympani together with the lingual, they're going to supply the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. The chorda tympani is giving the special sensation, where the lingual nerve is going to give you a general sensation. So that's your submandibular gland. Okay, one more time. We have the submandibular gland. This is submandibular gland, and it's been suspended by a sensory branch of trigeminal nerve. That's going to be a branch of V3, and if you have to be specific, you will say it's a branch, it's a lingual nerve, which is a branch of V3. So the lingual nerve is going to suspend the submandibular ganglion, and we have seen the submandibular ganglion is supplying the sublingual gland and the submandibular gland. But if you pay much attention here, we've said we have a branch which is going to join the lingual nerve, and that's going to be a branch of facial nerve, and it's called the chorda tympani. So this is the chorda tympani, which is a branch of facial nerve, is going to supply, is going to also connect to supply the submandibular ganglion. Okay, so if you want to check now the facial nerve, this is the facial nerve, and the facial nerve is coming from the superior salivatory nucleus, and then is going by the way of this nerve, which is called the chorda tympani. We have seen it. The chorda tympani is going to join the lingual nerve, and they're all going to supply the submandibular gland. But the facial nerve is carrying the parasympathetic fibers to the submandibular ganglion. But if you want to be specific, these fibers, they are preganglionic, because they have not yet synapsed in the ganglion. But the preganglionic fibers, let me make it very, very clear here. The preganglionic parasympathetic fibers, they have their nuclei they have their cell bodies within the central nervous system. Okay, this is worth noting. We have seen we have the parasympathetic ganglion, and the parasympathetic ganglion is where the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers are going to meet the postganglionic parasympathetic fibers, and they're forming synapse. But I want you to note that all these preganglionic parasympathetic fibers, they have their cell bodies already in the central nervous system, and these cell bodies are called the nucleus. And this is, for example, this superior salivatory nucleus, which means is a collection of neuronal cell bodies of preganglionic parasympathetic fibers of the submandibular ganglion. We've also seen, when I'm discussing about the otic ganglion, that you have the inferior salivatory nucleus, and that inferior salivatory nucleus, those are the preganglionic parasympathetic cell bodies that are going to be brought to the otic ganglion by the way of the Jacobson's nerve, that's going to form tympanic plexus, that's going to form the lesser petrosal nerve, and the lesser petrosal nerve now are going to supply the otic ganglion. Okay, so these the superior salivatory nucleus, it represents the cell bodies of the preganglionic parasympathetic that are going to supply these glands, and that's going to be through your facial nerve and through the chorda tympani. Now you can see the facial nerve is supplying both the sublingual and submandibular gland. But we're going to see when we discuss about the pterygopatean ganglion that you also have the nerve contribution from the facial nerve that's going to supply the pterygopatean ganglion. Okay, the facial nerve supplies both sublingual and submandibular gland, but it does not supply the parotid gland. Remember, the facial nerve is going deep through the parotid gland. It pierces the parotid gland, but it does not supply the parotid gland. Okay, it does not, even though it goes deep within the parotid gland, but it does not supply the parotid gland, and that's gonna be your facial nerve that enters the parotid gland. Okay, this is putting all together. We have the sensory route, which is through the lingual nerve. We have seen the parasympathetic, which is going through which is coming from superior salivatory nucleus and is going to supply the sublingual and submandibular gland, but through which nerve? Facial nerve. But you have to be specific, called the tympani, which is a branch of facial nerve, and this one is gonna come from middle ear. It does not come from the stylomastoid foramen. In this part of the nerve, this part is going through the stylomastoid foramen, but this one is branching in the middle ear to go to supply the structures within the oral cavity. Okay, so let's now make it very clear in terms of parasympathetic. We have said the parasympathetic contribution to the submandibular ganglion is coming from the superior salivatory nucleus. But these parasympathetic fibers are carried by the facial nerve, but specifically by the Chorda tympani. What are they? They are preganglionic parasympathetic fiber. Now, the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers of the submandibular gland, they are carried by Chorda tympani, and then these one are going to synapse within the submandibular ganglion, and they're going to synapse with the postganglionic parasympathetic fibers. So what are the postganglionic parasympathetic fibers? These are they are carried by the branches of the lingual nerve. This diagram here is for simplicity, to simplify the schematic illustration. Okay, so it's going to supply the sublingual and submandibular gland. That's going to be a parasympathetic. So let's go to the sympathetic. Now, we say the sympathetic is thoracolumbar. We do not have sympathetic within the head. So if we need to have sympathetic to the head, they have to come from the neck region, and the highest one is going to be your superior cervical ganglion, and the superior cervical ganglion is the source of sympathetic innervation to this ganglion, which is called the submandibular ganglion. How do they get into the head? They are coming through by the aid of artery. They are forming plexus around the artery, and this artery today is the external carotid artery. So they are using external carotid artery to get into the to come to supply this submandibular ganglion, and then from submandibular ganglion they are going to the glands, respective gland. That's going to be a sublingual and submandibular gland. Do they synapse within the ganglion? No, they do not synapse. Why? Because they are already postganglionic. They are already coming from a ganglion. Which ganglion? Superior cervical ganglion. So they are coming already from the ganglion, the sympathetic ganglion. They do not need to synapse within the parasympathetic ganglion because they are already postganglionic. They are coming from the ganglion. They do not need to synapse, and then they are going through and through. The sympathetic fiber, they are going through and through submandibular ganglion. They do not synapse within the submandibular ganglion. The only thing that's going to synapse within the submandibular ganglion is going to be the parasympathetic fiber that are brought by the Chorda tympani. Lastly, let's see the roots. The sensory roots that we already know that is brought by the lingual nerve branch of V3, and it does not synapse within the ganglion. And by far, it is only carrying the fiber. Is the reach is how this submandibular ganglion is going to reach. Is how the submandibular ganglion is going to supply its motor supply into the glands. So the function of this root is just to suspend. It does not synapse. Sorry, I meant submandibular ganglion, not aortic ganglion. Submandibular ganglion, and that's gonna be your. So this is putting all together. Okay, this is everything that you need to know, and this is just a summary of the picture of what we've been talking about, and this is a repetition, and that is side by side table. You can all recall at your own time. But please remember, this parasympathetic ganglion is secretomotor to submandibular glands and the sublingual and submandibular glands. Where is the location? You know the location. The preganglionic origin is superior salivatory nucleus, which is found the pons brought by the Chorda tympani, is going to join the lingual nerve, and then lingual nerve is going to suspend these glands, and that's what is the sympathetic input from superior cervical ganglion, and that is it. And yeah, see you next time.